Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is The Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
I'm often amazed at how many people don't realize that many atheists love the Christmas holiday. They see it as an oxymoron. Well, how can you enjoy Christmas? It's got Christ in the title, and they don't really make the connection. But it's true. There's a lot of us that love the Christmas season. A lot of us. And I do as well. Actually, I'm becoming more sentimental about the holidays as I get a little older. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's really true. It used to be that I just didn't really care. Holidays were kind of stressful, and you got to get together, and there's noise, and there's 40 people crammed in the house, and it's pandemonium, and I'm usually good for about 90 minutes maximum, and then I'm out. And that's how I've always been wired. When it comes to you're in a small space and everybody's talking at once. The TV's blaring, or maybe the radio's on, and you're hearing the clanking of the dishes, and the kids are running around playing with toys, and it's just chaos, you know. Even when it's not chaos, there's just the amount of people in the room, there's just noise, you know. I'm better 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 4-on-4. You get together, you can actually have conversations, you can make eye contact, you're not sitting on the end of the couch balancing the paper plate in your hand, you know. I really am better in kind of a less stressful environment. And I used to kind of do a drive-by. We'd go in, and we had a great holiday, but where everybody else would spend every possible moment there. It was a day, the whole day. It was an event. And me, I'd be good for about 90 minutes. And then I would find that my tank was full. I was a race car going into the red, and I needed to go and just park for a while, let the engine kind of cool down. Do you know what that feeling is like? But as I get older, I really am, for some reason, finding more and more of a desire to enjoy those moments. You know, with Natalie and the kids and whatnot, I'm really wanting to create memories here in the house. We're going to go Christmas tree shopping and find something that's just perfect for this home. You know, go out and find our tree. And it sounds corny when you say it out loud, but it's really how I feel about it. And I'm thinking about, what am I going to get everybody this year? Because I really want to do this, and I want to get something special here, and I can't wait. You know, there's nothing like seeing someone you love open a gift you know they're going to just freak out over. Or just the gesture behind the gift is what's important, if that's the case. Even if it's whatever, but you know that they see it as a gesture of affection and love, and you see that look on their face. They're wrapping, they're going through it, and they're shaking the box, and before you know it, they open it up, and they just love it. Thank you so much. Big hugs, and everybody does their thing. And, you know, a great example is was it last year? Or the year before, I gave her and her daughter a manicure pedicure thing. They say you can never go wrong with a day of pampering. Send them to the spa. Make them feel like a queen. Well, you're gonna laugh, but they went in to get pedicures, right? And I went with them. So we go into this place. And all these little ladies are out there, and they're working around. They're I don't know, they're just doing pedicures, whatever. They're doing girly stuff. And I'm telling you, that pedicure was bliss. It felt so good. I mean, all right, man. Don't leave, man. Hang on. Let me describe the scenario for you. Okay. Now, granted, I think I was the only guy in the whole row. You go in there and they sit you in this massage chair, right? You're in a massage chair and it's got the rollers on the back and it's warm and it feels so good. And then you roll up your kind of your jeans or pant legs or what have you and you stick them in this warm kind of roiling water. And then this little lady comes out on a stool, okay? And she kind of scoots up to your feet. And for about a half an hour, they just kind of massage your feet. I don't know. They're doing stuff with the nail and whatnot. I don't know. Whatever. They're put a little goop on it and they're scooping things. I don't know what. All I know is it felt amazing. It felt so good. And then they take this goop that's got little rocks in it and smells like menthol. And they rub it all over your feet and your ankles and they let it sit. And they put a warm towel on it. And then you just lay there and the massage chair is warm and the rollers are going up and down your back and your eyes are half closed and the music's playing softly and you hear kind of the water and you then they take that off and then they take out what looks like a little it's like a cheese grater, except it's not, but it's like a little grater thing. And when she hit the bottom of my foot with that sucker, I almost went like orbital. I almost went through the roof. Hugely ticklish, right? I just about came out of my chair. But I mean, they rub that thing over, then take this, and they pour some other goop on it. I don't know what those lotions are. Look, if you were to look in my bathroom and Natalie's side of the bathroom, you would see I got shampoo, I got soap, maybe a razor blade, toothbrush. I'm good. Her side of the bathroom had all manner of chemicals that I do not know what they do, but it ain't natural. I mean, what? Exfoliation, conditioning. What does it do? What's it made of? How much was it per bottle? It looks like you went to the health and beauty department at a Walgreens, and there it is. And each bottle has a purpose. But I'll tell you what, I'm a believer in the pedicure, man. I am a believer. And although I told the guys at the office, they're like, dude, we need to get you out to the gun range. I mean, you getting pedicures? Dude, we need to go out and, shoot some stuff and play some sports and whatnot. I mean, they're totally having a ball at my expense. And I'm telling them, look, if you go once and you sit in that chair, the massaging chair of bliss, and you allow them to take 30 minutes and just lull you into a trance, you will feel like royalty. And this year, I'm trying to figure out what to, you want to try to do something different. I love the holidays. And, most people associate Christmas with Christ, the Christ child. It's funny, we were playing some Christmas songs on the piano here right after Thanksgiving, just to see if we still knew them. And it's funny because most of the Christmas songs I remember are all Jesus-oriented. They're all about the Christ child, Oh, Holy Night and those type of things. And Christ is so heavily associated with this holiday. It was only after I sort of walked away from the faith and began to have dialogue with people who knew more about the holiday season than I did, which was, I didn't know anything, My knowledge of the holiday season was really outside of just you get together, you have a tree, you have logs in the fireplace and Bing Crosby on the CD player, and you sing Christmas carols and those type of things. I didn't know anything about the origins of the holiday. I know, except that, wait, the angel appeared to Mary or Joseph, depending on which scripture you read. And then they went over and then the shepherds and the wise men came, and there was a star in the east, and there was the baby Jesus, precious little baby Jesus, grew up to be a man. And then we killed him, and now he's coming again. That's the Jesus story. That's pretty much how most believers approach Christmas. And they're so quick to become indignant whenever you suggest that the origins of the holiday may not lie in the book of Matthew or Luke. They're like, then they just get angry. You would think, somebody whose first response would be curiosity. Hey, wait a minute. What do you mean Jesus isn't the reason for the season? Tell me about it. That should be the response, shouldn't it? What, there are origins outside of the Christ story? Earlier traditions that may explain? Well, I'm curious. Tell me about that. That's not the response you get. The response you get is, put the Christ back into Christmas. And then they plaster Facebook with these protests. You know, articles about public offices where they've had a nativity set in the front lawn of a government or a government office building or a fire station or something like that. And should our tax dollars be supporting any specific religion, and they declare it a war on Christmas, and they play the victim card and say it's another war on Christmas. Did you notice they started like 2 weeks? They started well before Thanksgiving on the war on Christmas thing. And then the whole time I'm starting to learn about the holiday, I'm like, well, wait a minute. How about just a presentation of the facts? Not just that tax dollars should not support any specific religion or religious story. I mean, I get tradition. And I know that Silverman and the folks at American Atheists take a little bit of a harder line than I do about, I mean, they'll go after, I don't know if they, how intentionally they do, but they'll go after like a fire station that has a nativity set. I mean, they believe all fights in that way are good fights. I hope I'm not overstepping by stating that, but I think it's pretty accurate. And, they say even the most unpopular battles, the small battles, have to be fought. I don't know that I go that far personally. I've got other focuses I'd like to have, but the origins of the Christ story and the traditions that we enjoy, those really aren't about Jesus Christ. I was telling someone about it today who was a believer, and I can't really describe the face that I got. It was. Did you ever see the movie AI and the little boy robot doll? That's what it was like. No emotion, just kind of a blank stare. Like, I don't know if they were mentally protecting themselves from whatever I had said or what, but I could tell that whatever I was talking about Saturnalia and all that stuff was just bouncing off. Christmas trees. Well, in the Northern Hemisphere, the shortest day and the longest night of the year falls around December 21st, okay? Called the Winter Solstice. And many people believe that the sun was God. And the winter came, the cold weather set in because the sun god had become weakened. And they celebrated the solstice because it meant that finally the sun god would begin to get well and regain his strengths. And they would have these evergreen boughs that reminded them of all the greenery that would grow when the sun god was at his true strength during the summertime. The ancient Egyptians worshipped Ra, who had the head of a hawk and wore the sun as a blazing disk in his crown. And at the solstice, when Ra started to recover right from the illness and began to get stronger, the Egyptians would fill their home with these green palms, and it symbolized the triumph of life over death. Early Romans, they marked the solstice with something called the Feast of Saturnalia, in honor of Saturn, the god of agriculture. They knew the solstice meant that farms would soon be green and fruitful. Things would begin to grow again. They decorated their homes to commemorate it with evergreen boughs. In Northern Europe, the Druids, they're the Celtic priests, by the way, they decorated all their temples with evergreen boughs, just as a symbol of everlasting life. The Vikings in Scandinavia, they thought that evergreens were a special plant of their god, the sun god Balder. Germany is actually credited with starting the Christmas tree tradition as we now know it. It was back in the 16th century, and devout Christians brought decorated trees into their houses. Some, they built these pyramids of wood, and they decorated them with evergreens and candles if wood was scarce. And many people believe it's widely held it's either urban legend or folklore, or I don't know how much evidence there is to support it, but it is said that Martin Luther, the Protestant reformer of the 16th century, he's the first guy who actually lit candles on the Christmas tree, which sort of started the Christmas lights. Now we hang Christmas lights. They say that's where it began. It's kind of a romanticized version of it. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what the urban legend or the legend says. It says he was coming home after a sermon one evening, and he was awed by the brilliance of the stars, and to recapture the awe, he put up a tree in like the room of his house, and he lit candles, and he sort of wired them all around the thing. But the Christmas tree wasn't accepted here in the United States of America for a long time. In fact, even as late as the 1840s, Christmas trees were seen and condemned as pagan symbols, right? An assault on the Christian God. It's pagan. We don't want it. It was literally 1900 before the Christmas trees started to catch on here in the U.S. By 1900, they say about 1 in 5 families would do the Christmas tree, and it took a couple of decades before the custom became pretty much universal. During the Great Depression in the United States, there were Christmas tree farms that started to pop up everywhere because nurserymen couldn't sell the evergreens for landscaping. Right? Nobody's buying that during the Depression, so they cut them for Christmas trees. Started to take off. There's a lot of great information online about the pagan origins of the Christmas tree. I did a video about it. It's called To Xmas and Beyond, where we sort of touch on the Christmas tree. We talk about Balder and Saturnalia and the sun god Ra. The exchanging of gifts also has some pagan origins back to this festival of Saturnalia. It was actually banned. That practice was banned by the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages. It was pagan. Now, you notice the pattern that the Catholic Church and the Christian Church and whatnot, they like to sort of either dress up or put their stamp on what was originally a pagan event. The same thing had happened earlier with Halloween, remember? All Hallows Eve was actually a response to earlier Druid customs, and the church was aghast that people were celebrating this devilry. So they decided, hey, I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's put together a holiday that's sort of like it, except we'll make it holy. And we'll call it our own. That's why when people get all freaked out about Halloween, I always remind them that it's actually a product of the Catholic Church. All Hallows Eve. Hello, Halloween. Mistletoe. Mistletoe's a happy tradition. You kiss under the mistletoe. It's so beautiful. It's a pagan symbol of life and fertility. So when somebody's got mistletoe up in the doorway of the house, that's pagan in origin. It is of the devil. It's a magic plant by the Druids and the Greeks. In Scandinavia, they called it the plant of peace. In fact, it was said that when enemies would come together to declare a truce, they would have mistletoe there. I'm trying to imagine. They don't hang it over them and then the enemies kiss. But mistletoe was present at the meeting where they declared the truce. And they see spouses who were fighting with each other would meet at the mistletoe to kiss and make up. It's a great tradition, but it's certainly not a Christian one. One of my favorites is when people flip out about Xmas. XMAS. You'll see it signed instead of Christmas. You'll see it written down instead of Christmas, and somebody flips out. And they say, the X has crossed Christ out of Christmas. Again, a war on Christmas, and they get indignant, and they have a hissy fit, and they post 50 comments on Facebook saying, I will say Christ, I will keep Christ in Christ. What does this do exactly, except they make them feel more righteous about themselves? Heaven forbid you take 30 seconds and do a Google search to find out exactly where it came from. No, let's just get indignant and flip out over Xmas. Well, Xmas is Christmas, and you can remind people of that. The X comes from the first letter of the Greek word for Christ. X is Christ. Before we get into your calls, I wanted to address some things that I also sort of addressed in the To Xmas and Beyond video. When we were taught to read the Bible and we were reading the nativity story, We as believers were taught to read the Bible sort of one book at a time. You read the account in Matthew, and then later you would read the account in Luke. You never read them parallel. You didn't put them side by side. So the incongruity of the story, the stuff that didn't make sense or the stuff that contradicted itself, really didn't hit you. It's ingenious. They teach you to read the Bible one book at a time. So you go back as a skeptic, and you take a look at the story side by side, and you go, hey, wait a minute. Some of this stuff doesn't make sense. The book of Luke says that Mary and Joseph traveled to Bethlehem from their home in Nazareth in Galilee. That's Luke chapter 2. Matthew said that Mary and Joseph lived in Nazareth only after the birth of Jesus Christ. They didn't travel from Nazareth. They didn't live in Nazareth till after Jesus was born. By the way, there's a huge, do I call it a controversy? It's a fascinating subject about whether or not the city of Nazareth actually existed in the first century. And it's something I would encourage you to study on your own. And if you see some really good stuff, send it to me or post it on the Facebook page. But the general gist is this. There is really no hard evidence that a city named Nazareth even existed in the lifetime of Jesus Christ. It's not mentioned once in the Old Testament, not one time. The Talmud names 63 Galilean towns, right? Never once mentions a Nazareth. Josephus, his extensive writings about the first century Galilee include mentions of 45 other cities. Not one mention of Nazareth. In fact, as I understand it, Nazareth received no mention, was not mentioned one time by any historian of the era until the beginning of the 4th century, and was likely named a lot later by somebody else. Was it people who were just, they were passionate Christians who wanted to name their Mecca because it was part of their myth and legend? Was it the opportunists who wanted to create the world's greatest tourist attraction? And you can't look at the Holy Lands today, by the way, and not tell me it's not a tourist attraction. People traveling from all over the world to walk the footsteps of Jesus, to go see the Dead Sea, to be in Galilee, to see Jerusalem, do all those things. And those people are, they're selling all these locations where Jesus did this and Jesus did that. It is tourism. No ancient historian or geographer mentions Nazareth before the beginning of the 4th century. I'd encourage you to do some homework on that and check my information. But it's a fascinating study. Really is. So who did the angel appear before? I'd always heard Mary. Luke chapter 1, right? The angel appeared before Mary and announced that, hey, some major stuff's going to go down. All right, you're about to be a parent. Matthew, though, it doesn't say the angel appeared to Mary. It says the angel appeared to Joseph. So I'm thinking, well, which one is it? And I've always had kind of a hard time with the entire, look, Jesus is going to manifest himself by impregnating a woman and making it look like she had sex out of marriage in a culture that considered that one of the worst offenses that you could possibly do. Hey, let's make this woman look like she and Joseph have been doing the horizontal mambo before they got married, and we'll let her explain that that Joseph isn't the dad, it's actually God. We'll see how that goes over. What about the 3 kings? The book of Matthew says they were not kings, they were magi. And they don't even say 3. There's no number. And Luke doesn't say magi. Luke says that Jesus was visited by local shepherds in the manger. What about the lineage of Jesus Christ? The Bible traces it, right? The book of Matthew lists 28 generations between David and the birth of Jesus Christ. 28. Luke, just a little way down the Bible, lists 41 generations. There's some speculation about the house and manger thing. Matthew says Jesus was born in a house. Luke says it was a manger. There was no room in the inn. Some people say the manger was part of the house and it combines. All right, I'll give you that. What about Herod? Matthew says that the family left. They were on the run because Herod had decreed that the firstborns should be killed. He wanted to find the Christ child and have it killed. That's in Matthew chapter 2. So Herod's decree sends the family rushing off to Egypt after Jesus is born. But if you read the book of Luke, they don't go to Egypt. They just go back to Nazareth. Or going to Nazareth, depending on which chapter you're reading. I don't know if they had been back if they weren't there the first time. A lot of that kind of stuff in the scriptures that just makes you shake your head. You ever been Christmas caroling? I don't do it very often. I don't get a lot of joy out of it, but I love it when I get to see other people do it, as long as it's not, 9:30 at night, and as long as they don't linger. They want to come by and they want to sing a song. It's kind of romantic. Christmas carols, those aren't Christian in origin, and they weren't Christmas related. They were pagan songs. They were sung in Europe thousands of years ago at the Winter Solstice celebrations. People danced around these big stone circles. In fact, the word carol means to dance to something, right? To celebrate the winter solstice, the dance of praise and joy. Written and sung during all four seasons, but only a tradition of singing them at Christmas has really sort of survived the years. Early Christians took over the pagan solstice celebrations, and they gave people Christian songs to sing instead of the pagan ones, right? AD 129, or BCE, a Roman bishop said that a song called the Angels Hymn should be sung at a Christmas service in Rome. Another famous early Christmas hymn was written in 760 by Comas of Jerusalem for the Greek Orthodox Church. And soon after, composers all over Europe started to write Christmas carols. But not a lot of people liked them. They were written and sung in Latin. And most civilians didn't know what the heck they were singing about. And by the time the Middle Ages hit, most people had lost interest in celebrating Christmas altogether. And that was changed by St. Francis of Assisi. In 1223, he started nativity plays that took place in Italy. And the people in those plays sang songs, or what they called canticles, that told the story. Sometimes the choruses of these carols were in Latin, but normally they were all in the common language, where people watching from the audience could understand it and get into it. And all of a sudden, carols took off again, spread to France and Spain, Germany, throughout Europe, and finally ended up here in the States. Here's a tradition I hadn't heard about till last year, and then I'll go to the phones. The Christmas Pickle. I heard this from Natalie, and don't say it. She brought a little ornament. It's a Christmas pickle. Here's the story. Back in the 1880s, Woolworth stores, these retail chains, started selling these glass ornaments that they imported from Germany. Some were in the shape of fruits or vegetables, right? And I guess pickles were in there somewhere. Now, around that time, it was claimed that the Christmas pickle was a very, very old German tradition, and that the pickle was the last ornament to be hung on the Christmas tree. And then the first child to find the pickle got an extra present. Now, reports are that this is just bogus, that this is a total myth. There are other stories linking the pickle to Christmas. One talks about a guy who fought in the American Civil War. He was born in Bavaria, in a part of what is now Germany. He was a prisoner of war. He was starving. He begged a guard, "Please give me one last pickle before I die." The guard felt sorry for him, and they gave him a pickle. And the pickle gave him the strength to carry on. There's another tale that's linked to none other than good old St. Nicholas. It's a medieval tale of two Spanish boys, and they're going home from a boarding school for the holidays, and they stopped at an inn for the night, and there was an evil innkeeper who killed the boys and put them in a pickle barrel. And that evening, St. Nicholas stopped at the same inn, and he found the boys in the barrel, and he brought them miraculously back to life. And there's a ton of different variations on this. With our tree, we just stuck the pickle ornament in there somewhere, and then we just let the kids try to find it. But when you're hiding the pickle, it just lends itself to so many double entendres that you just can't even. You feel like a little kid. I'm back in junior high. This is what the holidays have reduced me to, people. Let's talk about Christmas traditions with you. Area code 805. Thanks for waiting. You are on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hey, this is Dan. Listen, I'm impressed with that you got your history of all that correct. My friend is a professor at a college where he does about history, and he had to actually do this in front of people. There was about 75 Christians were there and some pastors, and he's basically, I think he's pretty much agnostic, and he was given the same history you were talking about, but he got a lot of kind of flack, and you could tell some people got really up, especially the Christians got really uptight and angry over this situation. But the number one thing is when he said, if Jesus was alive, he said, looking at, if you start adding the right time that he was born, it would have been around about 2 weeks after Valentine's Day. So he says, I hate to tell you Christians this, you don't own Christmas. It's not a Christian thing. It's completely a pagan thing. And
so you heard Valentine's, because I had heard August. I know that everybody bumps that date around the calendar depending on which historian you're listening to, but
sure.
But it certainly wasn't December the 25th. I guess that's the larger point, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I think they need to be. My thing is, and this may sound a little harsh, and you should tell me what you think about this. I'd love to hear your point about this, but I feel like if Christians are going to act like they own this, then they need to be sort of, I hate to use the term, nailed to the cross or put up against the thing and saying, listen, then you need to provide something to prove that this is really yours, or you need to really get down to the facts. I think they need to be pushed to the wall to this and to be real about it, because it does get me angry. For the longest time, I hated Christmas when I found out the truth. And then on top of that, when I was a kid, I hated church. And in the Lutheran tradition, in the farm where my grandparents, they made us go to church on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we had to go to church 3 times, which was, that to me was torture.
Yeah.
And so Christmas ended up being kind of a horrible thing for me. It was not really a thing that was well celebrated. It took time for me to actually, start respecting it. And then,
so you didn't look forward to Christmas Eve or Christmas morning, depending on when you opened the gifts, and you weren't a little boy excited about the holidays and Santa and all that stuff? You didn't get any of that?
Well, we did get it. It wasn't very, it just wasn't, to me, it wasn't as exciting and as pleasant, because you got to understand also, because when I went there and being around how my grandparents and parents were, also it was like, I liked Santa Claus, but I was always consistently afraid of this God thing, and I was afraid of going to church, and I was afraid to speak up. So Christmas just kind of got, in my opinion, it's like having a nice blouse and you just pour a bunch of bleach on it and destroy it. To me, going to church and adding the Christ thing to it actually created more pain because of everything that was evolved around. So it was not a good thing for me. It took me time to actually get over that, because it was always one of those bad things hanging over me. And so, I really didn't, even as a kid, I was up and down with, Halloween was my favorite time as a kid.
Well, hopefully you get some joy out of the holidays today, or are you totally ambivalent about it?
You know what? No, I'm with you. I was really, glad you said that, because actually through time and even now, and you and I are about the same age, no, I actually really appreciate it. And matter of fact, now today, I do more of like getting out there and helping out, and I already help out in hospice care, but I do that. And I like going and feeding the homeless, and I like to go out there and give and see my family. And now I have control, because I don't have to go to this church thing, which my mother's pretty disturbed about, but overall, it's this beautiful giving. And to me, it's about giving to society and putting smiles on people's faces, and that's the beauty I get from it now. And now I love it. So I'm with you on it. It's grown on me, and I've probably got a little bit cheesier these days. So
well, I saw there are some traditions that you and I didn't know about growing up that I just love about Christmas. I'd never heard of the Christmas Krampus before. The Christmas demon? I Googled that sucker. It's like 2 years ago. And there's Krampus parades, and there's some crazy stuff out there. And I think that is awesome. If you haven't seen it, it's spelled with a K. Kram as in Mary, Pus, the Christmas Krampus. And look, Google image search that sucker, everybody. And it's like Halloween and Christmas mixed together. It is awesome.
Well, I'm beginning to wonder, and I'll let you get going. I know you got other callers, but I'm wondering in a small way. I live here in Santa Barbara, California, so they do a lot of crazy celebrations, not only the summer solstice, but come to think of it, and I need to ask somebody, but I think not only do they celebrate Christmas, but they throw a couple of things in there, and I think I heard of that, and I'm going to find out. Boy, now you got me curious.
It's awesome. Yeah. And if you find some good stuff on it, send me an email, Seth@thethinkingatheist.com. Send me a link. Let me see it, okay?
No problem.
All right. Have a wonderful holiday. Merry Christmas. And by the way, if I say Merry Christmas, I hope nobody freaks out on me. But I call the holiday what it is. It's just Christmas.
Say Merry Christmas. I don't own it towards the Christians or anybody else. I think Merry Christmas is exactly what it is. It's this beautiful tiding, and I think it puts a joy on people's face. And you shouldn't feel bad for saying it. I think keep going. Appreciate you, man. Hope you have a wonderful holiday. We'll talk soon, okay? All right. Peace. Bye. All right. You know, Santa Claus is a big part of the holiday. And some Christian homes, I don't think a lot, but I've heard that they don't teach or tell their kids that Santa exists or what have you. You know, there are some people who really play it up. I knew one family, they were crazy about it. I mean, it was awesome. You know, they had their little kid. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it screwed him up for a few years. But they talked about Santa Claus is coming. He's going to bring you, you know, we're so excited. It's Christmas Eve. And so they put the milk, they literally put the milk and cookies out. And the guy, his name is Jim, who is, he's such a bigger than life guy. He talk about jolly and jovial and one of those guys who just sort of sucks the marrow out of every moment. He wants to maximize every moment, every memory. And so he would go outside, and I don't know if he rang bells or if he made it sound like there was something on the roof, you know, if he stomped around up there or what. And he would, ho, 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 you know, and they would tell him, don't, no, you can't be in there. You can't be in there. And then the kid would get up the following morning, probably after not sleeping at all that night, and there would be a half-eaten cookie, and the milk was half gone, and then there were presents there, and they played that out, I guess, for years. The kid thought it was awesome. Now, obviously, that takes you to the point where you have to one day let the child down if he doesn't figure it out himself and tell him it was all a bunch of crap. Say, actually, there is no real Santa Claus, just Daddy. Mm-hmm. But I'm one of those guys where I think childhood really needs to be about the imagination. I think children, I don't know how often I see, especially religion in so many ways, will just destroy imagination. And I love the wistfulness of the Santa story. What is the story behind Santa Claus? Well, St. Nicholas was a real guy, not the guy you see on the Coca-Cola commercials. He was a bishop. He lived in the 4th century in a place called Myra in Asia Minor. It's now Turkey, by the way. He was hugely rich, right? His parents died when he was a kid, and it was all his inheritance. And he was known to be a very kind man. He had a huge heart. He loved helping people, especially the poor. And he would give secret gifts to people who he felt really needed it, you know? He was kind of he would just create opportunities to, quote unquote, bless someone else with a gift. And there are a whole lot of legends about St. Nicholas. You know how any character is sort of romanticized through the ages, and you'll see them splinter off in on who knows how many directions. But there are some famous stories about it, and I'm going to cover them here, okay? Like, how did hanging up the stockings on the fireplace get started? Well, here's the most famous story. It has to do with St. Nicholas, all right? There's a poor guy, had no money, but he had 3 daughters. No money for a wedding dowry. So because he couldn't provide the dowry, his daughters could not get married. Now, for those of you who don't know what a dowry is, it's money that they pay to the bridegroom by the parents of the bride on the wedding day. And some countries still practice this. One night at random or whatever, St. Nicholas, he comes by, drops a bag of gold down the chimney, and it lands in the house. And this meant that the oldest daughter could go off and get married.
the bag, when it fell down, it fell into a stocking that had been hung up by the fire to dry. And this happened again later on with the second daughter. And the father wanted to find out, who's doing this? I got to figure out who's giving me all this money. So he secretly hid by the fire every evening until one day he caught Nicholas dropping in a bag of gold. And Nicholas said, please don't tell anybody what I'm doing. I don't want this to be about myself. But the father couldn't keep the secret, and the news got out. And finally, it became kind of a legend. And when anybody got a gift in secret, it was thought that maybe it came from Saint Nicholas. Because of his kind heart, he was made a saint. Not just the saint of children, but also the saint of sailors. There's a story that talks about him helping sailors that were caught in a dreadful storm off the coast of Turkey. It was raging all around them, and men were scared to death, afraid the ship was going to totally sink. And they prayed to Saint Nicholas to help them out. And suddenly they said, there he was. He appeared, he manifested himself standing on the deck, and he ordered the sea to be calm. And the storm died away, and then they were able to sail off safely into their port. St. Nicholas the guy was actually exiled, and he was imprisoned. No one really knows when he died, but apparently it was on a December 6th in around 350 A.D. In 1807, his bones were reportedly stolen from Turkey by some merchant sailors, and the bones are now kept in the church named after him in the Italian port of Bari. And there's a St. Nicholas feast day. It's the 6th of December, the day that he died. And sailors in that area still carry the statue of St. Nicholas from the cathedral out to the sea to allow him to once again bless the waters, and so he can give safe passage to the sailors and safe voyages throughout the entire year. So how did St. Nick become St. Nick? Well, here's the story. 16th century Europe. The stories about this guy had become hugely unpopular at that time. But somebody had to deliver the presents to kids at Christmas time. So in the UK, they called him Father Christmas. Just came up with a character from some old children's stories. In France, he was known as something else. In Germany, something else. In the USA, they called him Kris Kringle. He was the person who brought the gifts to children on Christmas time. And later on, Dutch settlers in the United States of America took those old St. Nicholas stories. They brought them over, right, when they came, and they sort of mingled them with Kris Kringle to become Sinterklaas, Sinterklaas, or as we now say, Santa Claus. A lot of countries, especially over in Europe, they celebrate St. Nicholas Day, 6th of December. In Holland, other places, children will leave clogs, these wooden shoes out, and the clogs are supposed to be filled with presents. They also think that if they leave out some hay and some carrots for the horse, for Sinterklaas's horse, that Sinterklaas will leave him some candy and sweets. It's kind of a Halloween injection, I guess, into it. And in 1823, there was a famous poem that came about. It was called A Visit from St. Nicholas, or 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. It was published. Dr. Clement Clark Moore, Clement Moore's a famous poem. He claimed he'd written it for his kids. I don't know if that's true or not. Some scholars say it was actually written by somebody else, a guy named Livingston, who was a distant relative of somebody on the family tree. But Moore, Clement Moore, is the one who is known for writing it. And then the poem describes 8 reindeer, and it gives them names. And they became really well known whenever the song Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was written in 1949. Can you name all the reindeer? Can you name all the reindeer at once? Let's see. There's Dasher, Prancer. I'm doing it in the song. Dasher and Prancer, Donner, Vixen, Comet and Cupid, and is one of them Vixen? It's going to bother me. I got to Google search it. By the way, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer might actually be a girl. You want to know why? Only the female reindeer keep their antlers throughout the winter. By Christmas time, when the gifts are delivered, the male deer have already discarded their antlers. They're gone. They're saving all their energy to grow a new pair of antlers in the spring. So is Rudolph a chick? That'll keep you up at night, people. Talk about jacking with your beloved Christmas traditions. Over the years, the Father Christmas legend in the United Kingdom and the American Santa Claus sort of became more and more alike, and now they're one and the same. Those legends have really merged. Some people say that Santa lives up at the North Pole. If you live in Finland, they say that he lives in their country, up in the northern edge called Lapland. But everybody who embraces today's Santa Claus stories agrees. He travels on a sleigh, it's pulled by reindeer, and he lands on your house, on your roof, comes down the chimney, and he places gifts for kids. And as they awake the next morning, they will have some goodies waiting for them. Some people say that Coca-Cola is responsible for the red suit that Santa wears, right? The Thomas Nast drawing that sort of set off that entire, I want to call it a marketing thing. That was an illustration in Harper's Weekly back in 1863, and it became a hugely famous drawing of Santa Claus. But actually, Santa wore red long before that, because he was a bishop, right? St. Nicholas had worn red robes. And during Victorian times, St. Nick wore all sorts of colors. There was red and green, blue and brown. But red was always his favorite. It's what he was known for. And they say that's how that sort of translated into the red from the Thomas Nast painting, drawing, and the red suit that Santa wears today. Good stuff. 949, you're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hi, this is Austin from Newport. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, and glad you called. What do you have for us, Austin?
Oh, I recently saw your video on Christmas, which I enjoyed, by the way.
Thank you very much.
And I talked to my friend who believes in God about this, and he gave me that blank stare that you mentioned earlier with listening concern. And his response to this was, well, that's your opinion.
I heard this the other day. I'm going to post the discussion I had with, he hosts a Christian radio podcast on his website, and he asked me if I would be a guest on his show. And I asked him if I do so, can I play it on my own podcast later this week? And he said yes. And I caught that very same flavor. It was, everybody's got a different opinion. I mean, you're going to find opinions everywhere. And the whole time I'm thinking, I'm not talking about opinion. We're talking about following the chain of evidence. You know?
Historical fact, yeah.
Yeah. What's the evidence say? Not, oh, you're going to find, look, I'm going to find somebody who has an opinion that the earth is flat. It doesn't mean I have to give them any credibility. Let's find out what the evidence says. So, do you celebrate Christmas? Do you enjoy the holiday?
Yeah, I celebrate Christmas with my family, and this will be actually my first Christmas as an atheist.
Is that weird? Is it going to get tense? Or are you good?
For me, it's kind of weird. Because, back in my younger days, this was around this time of the year, I would get very religious. I pray and I would go to church. And I remember one year, me and my brother and sisters, reenacted the nativity story in front of the family. So it's kind of weird for the transition to happen now. And, but the rest of my family doesn't know. That's the thing.
So you're just kind of playing that close to the vest, huh?
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to pray, I'm going to let them go ahead and pray. If they want to go to church, I'll suffer through that. But I mean, I see the holidays as just a time, for gift giving and, spending time with each other that you never see during the rest of the year. And I kind of just dropped religion from the whole concept.
I think there's so much to celebrate. We don't really require in my video, I said that the plastic Jesus on the nativity scene is actually more real than the actual man God Jesus that we're supposedly celebrating. There's enough out there for us to celebrate and for us to enjoy that I don't think the religious get to have a monopoly on Christmas. We can use those traditions, which are mostly pagan anyway, and spend time with the ones we care most about and create some memories and have a wonderful time.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? You good?
That's my piece.
All right, my friend. Well, I hope you have a Merry Christmas. Thanks for calling and thanks for listening. It means a lot.
You too. Happy holidays.
You betcha. I mentioned earlier in the show the Christmas Krampus. I had a second and I pulled up the website, and I wanted to go ahead and go a little deeper into this because it's such an awesome story. Krampus, Krampus, the Krampus is the Christmas devil. And so I went to Krampus.com, and yes, there is a website for the Christmas devil. And I'll just read it to you. It says, who in hell is Krampus? Well, Krampus is the dark companion of St. Nicholas, the traditional European winter gift bringer who rewards good children each year, December the 6th. Remember, we covered that date. The kindly old saint leaves the task of punishing bad children to a hell-bound counterpart, known by many names across the continent. And he lists a whole bunch of names here, many of which I cannot pronounce, or you don't want me to pronounce because I'm not good at those things. Usually seen as a classic devil with horns, cloven hooves, and monstrous tongue, but can also be spotted as a sinister gentleman dressed in black or a hairy man-beast. Krampus punishes the naughty children, swatting them with switches and rusty chains. Chains? Before dragging them in baskets to a fiery place below. Wow. Krampus is celebrated on Krampusnacht, which takes place on the eve of St. Nicholas's Day. In Austria, northern Italy, and other parts of Europe, partygoers masquerade as devils, wild men, and witches to participate in the Krampus run. In intoxicated, they're totally smashed and bearing torches. Costumed devils caper and carouse through the streets, terrifying child and adult alike. It's increasingly being celebrated in other parts of Europe, like Finland and France, and in even some cities here in the United States of America. Go to YouTube and type in Krampus Parade. I was amazed at how intense, how intensely scary, and how elaborate the Krampus costumes were. The glowing eyes, and you can see the pores in the skin and every crack, and the costumes and the oversized heads, and it was amazing. It is an amazing tradition, and it's fascinating because those of us who are used to the real happy little sweet little candy canes and poinsettias and all that stuff, the idea of a Christmas demon grabbing the naughty kids and dragging them down to hell, that's pretty intense. That's a good way to keep your kids from being naughty. You don't want a visit from the Krampus, do you? Speaking about poinsettias. Now, I don't know, do you say poinsettias or poinsettias? Old radio co-host of mine used to insist that they were poinsettias. I don't know. I'm from Oklahoma. They're poinsettias. There's an old Mexican legend about how the poinsettias and Christmas sort of became aligned. The legend says this: there used to be a poor Mexican girl. Her name was Pepita. And she didn't have any gifts to give to the baby Jesus at the Christmas Eve service. Right? She had nothing. So she walked up to the chapel, and her cousin was named Pedro. And he said, look, he's trying to cheer her up. He said, look, I know even the smallest gift, even the tiniest thing, even the most supposedly insignificant thing, given by somebody who loves him will make Jesus happy. Pepita didn't know what she could give. She didn't really have a gift with her. So she stooped over and she picked up a small handful of weeds off the road, and she sort of assembled them into a little bouquet. And she was embarrassed. This is all she had. But she took the little weed bouquet into the church, through the chapel, up to the altar, and she remembered what Pedro had told her. Hey, any gift forgiven from the heart is good. And so she knelt down and she put that bouquet of weeds at the bottom of Jesus' nativity scene, the little nativity on display. And right there, according to legend, the bouquet of weeds, is it bouquet or bouquet? Bouquet? Now I'm thinking too hard about it. Of weeds, the bouquet of weeds burst and became bright red flowers. It was a miracle. And that's what everybody who saw it happen thought as well. And from that day on, the bright red flowers were known as the flowers of the holy night. The shape of the poinsettia flower and the leaves are sometimes thought to be a symbol of the Star of Bethlehem. That's what supposedly led the wise men to find Jesus Christ right after he was born. The red-colored leaves symbolize the blood of Jesus Christ, and the white leaves represent the purity of Jesus. Have you heard of this tradition? I'd never even heard of, is it wassail? I guess it's like a hot cider. And there's a tradition that goes around it. It's called wassailing, an ancient custom that you don't see much of. Wassail is a derivative of the Anglo-Saxon phrase, which means good health. It's ways hail, I guess is how you say it. Good health. And I guess back in the day, it was a drink they made out of ale and curdled cream, roasted apples, eggs, cloves, ginger, nutmeg, and sugar. That actually sounds pretty darn good. And they would serve it in these huge bowls made of silver or pewter. In fact, in Oxford University, they have a big wassail bowl that's covered with silver. It can hold 10 gallons. 10 gallons. And there is a tradition called wassailing. I hope I'm saying that right. It was traditionally done on New Year's Eve and 12th night, but some people, mostly rich people, would drink wassail on all of the 12 days of Christmas. And the drink mix was sometimes called lamb's wool because the pulp of the apples looked all frothy and it looked like lamb's wool. There was one legend about how it was created. The legend goes like this. Wassailing began when a beautiful maiden named Rowena presented Prince Vortigern with a bowl of wine, and she toasted him by saying, "Wassail." And over the centuries, a great deal of ceremony developed around the custom of drinking wassail. Wassail? Is it wassail? It's wassail, isn't it? You know, that's what happens when you read a word for years before you hear it pronounced. I do it all the time. and then when I was a kid, it happened to me with the word potpourri. I was like, potpourri? It happens to me all the time. So I always call it wassail. It's wassail, isn't it? It just occurred to me. The bowl was carried into a room with great fanfare, and they sang a carol about the beverage. They actually had a song for it, and then they would serve it. And it sort of became a way of wishing each other a Merry Christmas. And there was even a carol about it. Here we come, wassailing or wassailing. Here come among the leaves so green. Here we come, wassailing so fair to be seen. Love and joy come to you, and to your wassail too. May God bless you and send you a happy new year. And God send you a happy new year. Wassail? I'm going to Google that. Doggone it. You know those Christmas candy canes that are all around the holidays? I love candy canes. Where'd they come from? Well, apparently, they originated, like so many other great traditions, in Germany. Germany is awesome. You guys have given us such good stuff. 250 years ago, they used to be these white sugar sticks, and they weren't curved, they weren't cane-shaped, and they weren't two-tone. They weren't red and white. And the legend goes like this, that there was a choir master who was worried about all these kids that were sitting super quiet through the long Christmas nativity service. I guess it was a pageant of some kind. And kids get fidgety because they're kids, and so the choir master gave them something to eat. And he wanted to remind them of Christmas. So what he did is he made them into a J shape to remind them of the shepherd's staff or the shepherd's crook, to remind them of the shepherds that visited the baby Jesus at the first Christmas. And sometime around 1900, they added the red stripes in and flavored them with peppermint or wintergreen. Sometimes the Christian culture will project other Christian meanings onto the parts of the cane, like the J can mean Jesus. Some say the white of the candy cane represents the purity of Jesus Christ, and the red is for the blood he shed for us when he died on the cross. The peppermint flavor might represent the hyssop plant used for purification in the times of Scripture. Around 1920, a guy named Bob McCormick from Georgia in the United States, he started making canes for his friends and family, and they started to become hugely popular. So popular that he started his own business called Bob's Candies, and that's where many of our candy canes come from even today. I guess the business has been bought and sold a few times, but they still, even now, 92 years later, make and are known for candy canes. Area code 204. Thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Steve from Winnipeg. You probably remember me from a few months back when I emailed you about global warming. Remember that?
I've received many of those.
Oh, really?
But I'm sure I have. Yeah, I'm sure I have, and I'm sure I've seen the link. I take a little bit of heat because it's not that I don't buy the science behind global warming. I don't share the alarmist tone that comes with those who are like, the planet's going to end in 10 years. They were saying that 20 years ago. Honestly, whatever the truth is, that's what I want to know. So I appreciate
we'll
you
find
sending
out.
the
Well,
links.
in my case, it doesn't matter. I'm almost 72, so
Whatever. You're just a minnow
before anything warms up.
Go ahead, sir. What do you have for me?
Just a couple of comments about Christmas observance. I come from both sides. I was raised in the Eastern Orthodox faith, and so we observed Christmas on January 7th, which is the equivalent of December 25 according to the Julian calendar. And later on, as a teenager, I decided to become a member of the Radio Church of God, and they, of course, didn't observe Christmas, and I haven't been observing Christmas ever since.
You just don't bother with it, huh? You just decided no more Christmas.
I don't bother with it. The only thing we do, and my wife and I, we'll buy gifts for our son and daughter-in-law, and the 2 grandchildren. But apart from that, no Christmas tree, no lights, no cards or anything. You
don't feel like you're missing out? You're not missing out on all the red
really.
and the green?
I think it's a big bore, actually. I think it's a lot of hassle and a lot of tension, and I hear so many people say that I come in contact with, I'll be glad when Christmas is over. And no, I don't really miss it. Actually, I'm relieved.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I wanted to mention something else. I'm sure you know that there are many Christians who don't believe in observing Christmas. Are you familiar with any of them?
I don't know any of them. I mean, of course, I'm here in the Southwest where, we're all a bunch of Protestant Christians around here, so it's all...
There's probably hundreds of thousands across the world who don't observe Christmas and who are Christian, but they're the Sabbath-keeping Christians, the Saturday-observing Christians. And groups like the Philadelphia Church of God, the Restored Church of God, the groups that basically broke off from Herbert Armstrong. And he had connections with the Church of God Seventh-day that goes back to the 1860s.
Wow.
And they don't observe Christmas.
So is it an outright rejection, like Christmas is wrong or Christmas is an affront to us?
Yes, it is. It's viewed as pagan. And therefore, what they do is they observe the feast days of Leviticus 23. Passover, unleavened bread, Pentecost, Tabernacles. They believe that the feasts of the Lord are to be observed rather than these pagan holidays.
God, I hope they don't fashion the rest of their lives around the book of Leviticus, because, we're talking about some, you better lock your doors, man. I mean, that's a scary book.
I know. I realize that. No, it's picking and choosing like anybody else in any religion.
Pardon me, sir, do you boil a goat in its own mother's milk? I mean, you just don't hear that question posited to modern-day Christians.
I know.
So, yeah.
Anyhow, I've got another question for you.
Yeah.
Now that I've got you on the phone, or you have me on the phone, I'm always fascinated by atheists observing Christmas. Why would you want to observe Christmas?
Well, I don't see it as observing the Christ child story, but I tell you what I get irritated by, and I hear this a lot when it comes to like atheist gatherings and whatnot. I hate the idea that religion has or claims a monopoly on anything. And I think I would take a harder line about it if the Christ child story really accounted for the Christmas holiday. But honestly, the fact that so many of those traditions predate the Christ story and come from pagan roots, I almost see it as kind of a taking back of the day, making it what it should be in the first place, which is a celebration of people. And it's my way of just saying, Christians, you don't own the 25th of December. You just don't. I'm going to use it. I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah, my perspective on it, and again, I'm viewing it as a former Christian who didn't observe Christmas, is if you as an atheist reject God, why bother with something religious from another religion?
Am I a Druid? No. But am I Catholic? No. But do I enjoy Halloween? Hell, yeah. And I think in my mind, and maybe it's a rationalization, I think that the holiday is what you make it. And I love the idea.
I'm not being critical of that. I mean, I'm not changing people's minds or anything, and I lived through it, and I just wonder about it because I think if I turned into an atheist, and I'm a skeptic, I'm still holding out for that hope that there is something beyond this universe.
Sure.
But regardless.
Well, I also like, there are some plays on the holiday I love, like the, Festivus for the Rest of Us, and the people who, is it Axial Tilt Day, where they put just the metal pole up in the undecorated steel pole with like a base on it in the middle of their living room and put Christmas lights on it. I mean, a lot of people will play it for laughs and come up with some angle on it that's really, really clever.
I'm not familiar with that.
You ought to Google it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right,
well,
my friend.
Anyhow, those are in my thoughts.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, okay. You take care.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye. I almost wished him a Merry Christmas, then I thought, wait a minute. I don't think he celebrates the holiday. I heard a great Christmas tradition. They were talking about the Vikings of Scandinavia. They always have the logs in the hearth, right? They have the logs in the fireplace, and you always see those. You see them in almost every Christmas setting that is displayed. Is always the warmth of the fire next to the Christmas tree, next to the the hot cider and the apple pie and all of the ornaments and the gatherings and whatnot. Well, the history of that is fascinating, and it's an awesome tradition. The Vikings of Scandinavia used to burn Yule logs, right? They'd place them out there, and they would light them, and then they would have a party. And the party was in celebration of their god, the sun god Balder, Balder. And those people would party till the last ember waned. So I don't know. Now, I don't know how many logs there were. I don't know how big the stack of wood was. I don't know how long the party went on. But those people partied until the last ember went out. And I thought, that's brilliant. It's like having the big hourglass. And you just go till the final grain of sand falls out and hits the bottom of the glass. Area code 330. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Thanks for waiting. Who's this?
This is Taylor.
Taylor, what's going on?
Not much. I was calling about a couple things. One was just, you were talking about the keep the Christ in Christmas people.
Yeah.
Well, I found this thing that I'm going to be doing on Facebook this December that I think is the perfect rebuttal to that whole nonsense.
Okay.
It's a picture of Han Solo, but someone photoshopped a menorah into his hand instead of his blaster. And it says, keep the Han in Hanukkah.
I love it. Post that on my Facebook page, would you?
Definitely.
All right, I'll be looking for that.
Yeah. And the other thing was, I've got these neighbors that have a Christmas decoration. I've seen it before, and I've never really thought too much about it. It's kind of like a nativity. It's one of those wooden cutout things. It's the baby Jesus in the manger, but it's got Santa Claus on his knees and like praying over the baby. And I always thought, a couple Christmas images there. You've got the baby Jesus, you've got Santa Claus. It never really hit me until this year. That image makes absolutely no sense.
Santa praying for the Christ child?
Yeah. Santa is a product of Christmas. Christmas didn't exist until well after Jesus' death. Unless Santa's sleigh has a flux capacitor installed and he can go back in time, I don't think Santa would have been praying over Jesus.
Oh, you've just ripped the magic right out of the holiday for me now, haven't you? You've just stolen my joy. No, it makes perfect sense. That's awesome, man. Well, I wish you a great holiday. Hope the Christmas season's good to you, my friend. Thanks for calling the show.
Thank you.
All right, take it easy. Many people are asking how they came up with the 25th of December. I don't know how many Christians actually believe. I don't think actually many Christians believe. There are a few who believe that Christ was actually born on the 25th of December, but most realize that that's kind of a date chosen elsewhere. What they don't know is where the date came from. Well, we talked about the Winter Solstice, which was around, the 21st, 22nd, right? Which helps to explain it. But also, it's the solstice feast date of Mithras. It's the Roman god of light. And that was a festival that happened on the 25th of December. And that most likely, and celebrations like that most likely account for December 25th being used. for the Christmas holiday. I myself, maybe I'm a hypocrite for enjoying the holiday. Maybe I've sold myself out. Maybe I'm not hard enough on it. But I myself, I look at this time of year and I think life's too short. I mean, I don't. If somebody comes up and wishes me a Merry Christmas, I don't flip out. I don't. Merry Christmas. Hope the holidays are good to you. I wish you the best. I think that's the approach I wish more people would take. Most of the time when I see somebody post on Facebook, about put the Christ in Christmas or whatnot, I don't even bother. Sometimes I'll engage, but sometimes I just think you got to choose your battles. And if you go after each one of those, you're just not gonna, how much are you really going to accomplish? I did post something well before the Thanksgiving holiday that essentially said, everybody relax and enjoy the season. It was a positive post, and I wanted it to be that way. But, everybody, hope your holiday season is wonderful. It's all good. Sure, many of the traditions we celebrate around the supposed birthday of the Christ child have nothing to do with the Christ child. And I actually bullet pointed some of the earlier pagan festivals and traditions that sort of integrated themselves into the later Christmas holiday. But I did it in a positive way. And I posted up there and said, hope you have a wonderful holiday season and Merry Christmas. And how many comments did I get? 0. Nobody commented on that one. But it was a way to kind of address it and say, hey, anybody who's taken more than a tertiary look at the situation, we all know that Jesus really isn't the reason for the season. Jesus actually, the Christ story actually ripped off its story from earlier traditions and some pretty awesome parties that the pagans had back in the day to celebrate all sorts of gods. And I hope whatever the season is for you, it's a positive experience. It's a chance for you to take stock in hopefully what has been a wonderful year. And as we plan for 2013, just know that I am so grateful for you. And I hope you and yours have a positive time. I hope your holidays with family or whatever your plans are, I hope they're wonderful. And get ready, because we're expecting some very cool stuff in 2013. Coming up next Tuesday, we're going to do just kind of a roundtable with any subject. I'm calling it the Fireside Chat. Maybe we'll change the name to the Yule Log Chat, but it's Fireside Chat. And it's all up for grabs. Whatever you want to chat about, that's the topic. Next Tuesday night on the Thinking Atheist Radio Podcast.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.